Hey everyone, and welcome back to Malaysia in Focus, where we dive deep into the real stories shaping Malaysia's economy and society today. Because today's explainer unpacks a harsh truth about your monthly paycheck, a truth you've probably felt but maybe never fully understood until now. We're looking at a staggering new World Bank report that reveals exactly why you might be working harder than ever, but your salary, well, it just isn't growing to match it. You know exactly how it is, right? We turn on the news and we hear these really proud announcements. Our GDP is growing. The economy expanded by more than 5% last year, and unemployment, it's dropped to a record low of 2.9%. On paper, the Malaysian economic engine is humming perfectly. Yet, when you look at your bank account at the end of the month, our wallets somehow feel emptier than ever. There's this deep, incredibly frustrating disconnect between the national numbers and our everyday personal reality. And it's actually hitting the middle class the absolute hardest. If you look at the wider trend, sure, real wages have technically increased since 2010, but that growth has been incredibly uneven. If you are sitting in the middle class income bracket, you have suffered a severe wage penalty. You've literally seen the absolute slowest wage gains across the board. So while your pay barely inches up year after year, the cost of everyday groceries, healthcare, and just basic living expenses keeps climbing. So here is the big aha moment. Having a job is no longer the main challenge in Malaysia. We are actually excellent at generating employment. The real issue, the structural problem at the very heart of our economy, is that our jobs just aren't paying enough to build a high-income life. If you feel stuck, I need you to know it is not your fault. It is a systemic failure to generate quality, well-paying opportunities. If this breakdown is already giving you a clearer picture of what's going on with your paycheck, do me a quick favor. Hit like and subscribe. It helps you stay ahead on Malaysia's biggest economic stories and ensures you're part of an informed community that's always one step ahead. Okay, so how do we make sense of this? We're going to break down the 4 core reasons the World Bank identified for our low salaries: the productivity slowdown, top firms stalling, massive underemployment, the unexpected impact of climate change, and finally, how we actually fix it. Let's dive right into reason number 1, the productivity slowdown. In economics, your salary is fundamentally tied to how much value you produce. Simply put, wage growth cannot sustainably outpace productivity forever. Think of it like baking a cake. Over the past decade, Malaysian workers have gotten really good at baking standard cakes faster. But to justify employers paying top-tier salaries, we need to be producing higher-value, fancier cakes, right? Instead, our labor productivity has completely lagged behind our wage growth. We're working hard, no doubt about it, but the economic value of what we produce isn't rising fast enough to pull our salaries up with it. And to put that into perspective, the World Bank issued a pretty stark warning when comparing us to our neighbors. Back in 2010, a Malaysian worker was twice as productive as a worker in China. But fast forward to 2024, China has rapidly caught up to our productivity levels, largely through aggressive automation and education. Meanwhile, our neighbor, Singapore, who was already 4.4 times more productive than us in 2010, has widened that gap even further to 4.6 times. We are quite literally losing our competitive edge. Which brings us to reason number 2. Our top firms are stalling out. This builds directly on that productivity issue, and it has to do with the absolute best companies in Malaysia, what the World Bank calls frontier firms. These are our top 10% most productive companies. They're highly efficient, they adopt the latest tech, and incredibly, they pay their staff about 3 times more than the average firm. Think of a frontier firm like a high-speed train. They're fantastic, they're modern, and they're moving fast. But they just aren't adding enough passenger carriages to bring the rest of the Malaysian workforce along for the ride. Because while these top-tier firms pay incredibly well, their overall market share and their hiring rates have actually shrunk over the last decade. Why is that happening? Well, they're struggling to scale up due to a serious brain drain of Malaysian innovators moving overseas, combined with a really poor record of transferring technology from universities and foreign investors into local industry. And because these top companies aren't expanding, there were simply fewer well-paying jobs available for the rest of us. And that leads us to reason number 3, which is a huge pain point: underemployment. This is arguably the most frustrating reality for young Malaysians today, being overeducated but completely underemployed. You know the story. You spend years getting a university degree, only to find the jobs available out there just don't match your skills. The data on this is staggering. Nationally, 36% of tertiary educated Malaysians are underemployed. They're working in semi-skilled or low-skilled jobs, and it varies wildly depending on where you live. In Kuala Lumpur, it's about 18.6%, but in states like Kelantan, over half, 52.3% of graduates are trapped in lower-skilled roles. There's a quote from World Bank senior economist Dr. Matthew Dornan that I really want to share because it perfectly validates what so many of you are feeling. He says, "These people did the right thing. They studied, applied themselves, graduated, and entered the labor market, but the economy isn't generating enough high-skilled jobs to absorb them." So again, if you are struggling out there, it's a systemic failure of the economy. It is absolutely not your personal failure. And the financial cost of this mismatch? It's brutal. When a highly educated worker is forced to take a mismatched job, those postings you constantly see online for admin cum sales, they face a massive 49.3% wage penalty. Think about that. You are losing nearly half of your potential salary just to survive. And when that happens on a large scale, it drags down the entire nation's wage growth. Now for reason number 4, and this one might surprise you: climate change. This was perhaps the most unexpected reason brought up by the World Bank, and man, it sparked a massive debate online. The claim is that climate change is literally killing our wages. Let's look at the economic logic from the report first. Major economic hubs like Klang, Penang, and Johor Bahru have seen their number of high flood risk days completely double. When these areas flood, factories can't operate, machinery just sits idle, and operating costs absolutely spike. The World Bank's data reveals that to absorb these massive losses, companies don't necessarily fire people. Instead, they cut or freeze wages, which results in an average 1.6 to 2% wage drop for the affected workers. But as you can imagine, this caused an absolute uproar online. Malaysians on forums like Reddit quickly pushed back, arguing that bad weather shouldn't be a free pass for what they feel are stingy bosses to just suppress wages. Some pointed out that other countries face way worse natural disasters without similar wage stagnation. Now, we're not here to take a side, but rather to impartially present the landscape. The World Bank data points to a measurable, structural loss in wages due to floods, while the everyday working Malaysian feels it's often just another convenient excuse to keep their pay artificially low. The reality is, while that 2% drop is in the data, it's really just one piece of a very complex puzzle. Okay, so that's the reality check. Part 5, the solution. How do we actually fix this engine? We've diagnosed the 4 core problems: slowing productivity, stalling top firms, massive underemployment, and climate disruptions. So how does Malaysia start generating better paychecks for everyone? It all comes down to a fundamental shift. We have an increasingly educated, smart workforce. But we cannot just keep creating any jobs. We can't rely on low-skilled labor or mismatched administrative roles anymore. We absolutely must shift our national focus to creating high-quality, well-matched jobs that require complex skills and, most importantly, pay accordingly. To do this, the World Bank recommends that the government must go way beyond just mandating a higher minimum wage. Because look, forcing a higher wage floor doesn't fix a broken ceiling, right? We have to support true innovation. We must align what our universities are teaching directly with what the modern tech industry actually demands. And crucially, we have to clear the red tape so those top-tier frontier firms we talked about can scale up, compete globally, and finally start hiring our bright graduates at the salaries they actually deserve. Thanks for joining me for this explainer. Join thousands of Malaysians who want clarity, not confusion. Tap like, hit subscribe, and let's keep making sense of this together. I'll leave you with this final provocative thought. With all the long hours we put in, the degrees we earn, and the sacrifices we make, are we truly building a high-income nation, or have we just settled for being a hard-working one? Let me know what you think down in the comments. See you in the next explainer.